Welcome to The Explainer. I'm so glad you're here today because we're taking a really fascinating journey together, and I'm going to be your personal guide. For this explainer, I actually want you to try and step right into my shoes. Imagine you're walking through a typical day, totally inside the brain of a male adult living with ADHD. Because what you see on the outside is really just the tip of the iceberg. But beneath the surface, man, it is a massive, complex, and honestly pretty exhausting world of executive function challenges, emotional regulation hurdles, and just constant mental gymnastics. So let's dive right into this, shall we?
So, picture this. Have you ever spent hours, and I mean literally tearing your house apart, looking for your car keys or your wallet, only to finally discover them just chilling right next to a frozen pizza in your freezer? Now, for a neurotypical brain, that sounds like this bizarre, once-in-a-lifetime total accident. But for my ADHD brain, that's honestly just a random Tuesday. And it perfectly captures the deeply frustrating, highly visible realities of living with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder as an adult. We constantly lose things that are absolutely necessary for basic tasks, and it just sets this incredibly chaotic tone for the rest of the day.
Section 1. The daily ADHD reality. Let's take a look behind those daily symptoms.
When you read the official diagnostic manual, the DSM-5, it describes symptoms with these clinical phrases like fails to give close attention to details or difficulty organizing tasks. But medical textbooks are incredibly dry. What does that actually look like when my alarm goes off in the morning and I have to get ready for work? Well, it looks like the concept of the doom pile. You walk into my bedroom and there are just stacks of mail, half-read books, and clothes everywhere. They accumulate because in that specific moment, my brain literally cannot process the decision of where they actually belong, so they just get stacked. And it doesn't stop at home either. At work, failing to give close attention means I might agonizingly reread a simple email 3 separate times to make sure it's perfect, completely miss an obvious typo, and just hit send anyway.
And this creates a huge disconnect in how we're perceived by others. People see these external behaviors and they immediately judge them as character flaws. For example, my colleagues might see me constantly interrupting them during a meeting. What they see is someone being rude, impulsive, or acting like they just don't care about what anyone else has to say. But what's actually happening internally? My working memory is so compromised that if I don't verbalize that thought the exact second it pops into my head, it will completely disappear forever. It's a failure of executive function, right? It's not a lack of respect. And this all builds into one of the absolute most stressful parts of my day, time blindness. My brain genuinely does not comprehend the passage of time the way other people's brains do. I might sit down to do a quick task that I swear will only take an hour, and suddenly, poof, 3 or 4 hours have just vanished. Because of this, I'm consistently running late, no matter how hard I try, which makes managing a strict workday incredibly stressful and, frankly, fills me with a lot of daily guilt. Section 2. The hidden cost of masking. Let's talk about what hiding these symptoms actually means.
So, how do I actually survive in a professional environment that wasn't built for my brain? Well, I fake it. This is called masking. It's when someone with ADHD consciously or even unconsciously hides their natural behaviors to appear neurotypical just to fit in and feel safe. And this is what I'm doing all day long. I am constantly rehearsing conversations in my head before I have them. I am suppressing my natural physical energy and fighting the urge to fidget so I appear calm to everyone else. I am forcing myself to focus intensely so I don't zone out, and I'm constantly hiding how long things actually take me to complete. I'm quite literally using crippling anxiety as the fuel to meet my deadlines, and let me tell you, it is an utterly draining performance.
The inevitable result of all that masking is exactly this. ADHD burnout is a period of deep mental, emotional, and physical exhaustion that can happen after prolonged stress, high executive function demands, and masking. When I finally log off from work and that anxiety-fueled adrenaline drops, I don't just clock out for the evening. I experience a massive systemic crash. Section 3. Hitting the wall of awful. What it really means to be totally paralyzed by tasks. You'd think that after a long day, doing a simple household chore like, just putting a load of laundry in the wash would be easy, right? But suddenly, trying to tackle that simple task feels physically impossible. I am completely paralyzed by the wall of awful. It's this invisible emotional barrier. It literally prevents you from starting tasks, especially ones you failed at in the past. So the really crucial point I want to make here is this. When you see me staring at a basket of dirty laundry and not moving, It is not laziness. It's a literal, emotional, and neurological barrier. My brain is just flat out failing to initiate the task.
And this paralysis is heavily tied to another symptom called rejection-sensitive dysphoria, or RSD. RSD is this intense, almost physical emotional pain triggered by perceived failure or criticism. When I look at that laundry, I don't just see clothes. My brain subconsciously remembers all the times I left the wet clothes in the washer for 3 days until they smelled sour, and all the times I felt like an absolute failure because of it. That fear of failing again creates a disproportionate emotional wound that completely stops me in my tracks.
Section 4. Navigating time and space. Okay, let's look at some practical systems that actually help.
Now, it's not all doom and gloom, I promise. We don't just suffer through this. We learn to adapt. Now that we understand the internal mechanics a bit better, let's look at how we navigate time and space using practical systems that actually work for a brain like mine. First up, taming the physical chaos. Remember those doom piles we talked about earlier? Well, ADHD expert Michael Laskoff suggests that because our brains lack internal structure, we have to build our own external systems, creating specific visual limits, like dedicating one particular drawer in a filing cabinet for papers you just don't know what to do with, gives that chaos a designated home, and that removes the visual clutter that overstimulates us.
Next, we have to make time visible. Because of time blindness, standard clocks often just don't register in my brain at all. Adapting tools like the Pomodoro technique, working in those short focus bursts, and using visual timers can be absolute lifesavers. Another ADHD expert, Ben Glenn, started using a specific time tracking device that visually shows time lapsing. He noted that once he started using it, he actually stopped accidentally leaving his daughter at daycare because he lost track of the evening. I mean, that is huge.
And to prevent finding my keys in the freezer ever again, we use the essential spot. Ben Glenn shared an incredibly relatable hack for this. The guy is 6 foot 4 inches tall, so he trained himself to put his keys and wallet on the very top of his refrigerator the exact moment he walks in the door. It's out of the way, it's highly specific to him and his height, and he knows exactly where his essential items are every single time he needs to leave the house.
Section 5. The ADHD Survival Toolkit. Let's dive into a few behavioral hacks.
Getting out the door on time is notoriously difficult for a brain lacking executive function, so we gamify it. First, we put bright, bold Leave Now signs right on the exit door to interrupt our distraction. Then, we turn the whole morning routine into a race. We'll use a stopwatch app, try to beat yesterday's time, and actually log our personal bests. Why does this work? Because the ADHD brain completely thrives on novelty, competition, and dopamine. Turning a really boring routine into a high-stakes, dopamine-driven game finally makes punctuality possible.
And when it comes to conquering that wall of awful for incredibly boring tasks, there is truly no better tool in the toolkit than body doubling. Body doubling simply means having another person present, either in the same physical room or even just on a video call while you work on something you are struggling to initiate. It provides this great external structure without the pressure of someone actively managing you or breathing down your neck.
As one individual noted, there's something about the social presence of another person that gives me the right level of dopamine to get a task done. It basically acts as a mirror. The calm reflection of another person sitting quietly and focusing is exactly what our overstimulated, chaotic brains need to latch onto. It essentially lends us the executive function we are so desperately lacking in that moment.
Section 6. Thriving with your brain through supportive life habits.
As our day comes to a close here, it's vital to remember that managing ADHD isn't just about cool productivity hacks or tricking yourself into doing chores. It's about fundamentally building a life that supports your neurology. It's about thriving with your brain, not constantly battling against it. And that brings us to the golden rule of adult ADHD management, the 80-20 rule. You have to ruthlessly protect the 20% of your daily habits that provide 80% of your life stability. For most of us, this means prioritizing 4 non-negotiable things above everything else: taking your medication consistently, protecting your sleep, timing your meals properly, and getting physical exercise. If you do nothing else on a really bad day, doing just those 4 things will keep the foundation from completely crumbling. Which leaves us with this final thought for you to take away today. Instead of spending all your precious energy masking your symptoms, forcing yourself into neurotypical boxes, and eventually burning out, how will you redesign your day for your unique brain rather than against it? By understanding the reality of the ADHD iceberg and utilizing tools like body doubling and visual time management, you can finally stop fighting yourself and start living incredibly well. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.